This is a triple tax advantaged account that can save you a ton of money on your healthcare costs. Hello and welcome to Practical Personal Finance, where you get the information you need to understand and succeed with money. In the next few minutes, I'm going to get you up to speed on what a health savings account is and how it functions. Then I'll tell you about how to determine if you're eligible for a health savings account and how much money you can stash inside of one. And finally, I'll help you understand the tax advantages of a health savings account. Make sure you stick around until the very end of this video, because that's when I'll provide my recommendations for whether or not an HSA might be a good fit for you. Let's start with the most basic question of all. What is a health savings account? To put it simply, a health savings account, or HSA for short, is a special type of savings account that you can deposit money into. That money can then be used to pay for medical bills and many other health-related expenses. You can open the account on your own at a bank or brokerage, or it can be set up for you through your employer. Once you have the account open, you'll be able to deposit money into it. You can choose to make deposits on your own whenever you like, or to have a specific amount automatically deposited from your paycheck, just like with your 401k plan. Later on, when a health-related expense comes up, you can use the money inside of your health savings account to pay for it in one of two ways. The first method is to pay for the expense directly by using a debit card attached to the HSA. The second method is to pay for the expense with another form of payment, like a credit card or cash, and then submit the receipt to be reimbursed later from the money inside your HSA. But what if a health-related expense doesn't come up? What happens to the money you've been depositing into your HSA? Fortunately, that money continues to roll over from year to year for your entire life. It'll always be there, even if you go years without incurring any major medical bills. And if you set up your HSA through work but later change jobs, don't worry about that either. Your HSA is portable and it'll come with you. Now that you understand the basics of what an HSA is and how it functions, let's talk about some of the limitations. The first limitation has to do with who's eligible to open this special type of savings account. In order to open an HSA, you need to have something called a high deductible health plan, or HDHP. As the name implies, this is a health insurance plan with a high deductible. How high? The amount is updated on an annual basis. But in 2021, the year of this recording, the minimum deductible you must have in order to be eligible for an HSA is $1,400 for individuals and $2,800 for families. If your deductible is that amount or larger, there's a very good chance that you are eligible for an HSA. The second limitation involves how much you can deposit into a health savings account each year. Again, the amount is updated on an annual basis. In 2021, you can deposit up to $3,600 as an individual or up to $7,200 as a family. If you're watching this video in 2022 or later, the amounts for the minimum deductible and the contribution limit have probably changed. I'll leave a link down below to the healthcare.gov website where you can see the most up-to-date numbers regarding health savings accounts. The third limitation has to do with what you can use the money in your HSA to pay for. As I mentioned earlier, it needs to be a health-related expense. That typically includes prescriptions, doctor's visits, lab testing, surgeries, and even dental and vision care. But not every medical expense is covered. For things like cosmetic surgery, teeth whitening, and hair transplants, you might be on your own. The best way to determine whether or not an expense is HSA eligible is to ask your health insurance company. Whatever you do, don't go spending money in your HSA on a new phone or game system. It's very important that the money in your health savings account only be used to pay for qualified medical expenses. Otherwise, there are some pretty stiff penalties from the IRS. One question that might be going through your mind might be, what happens to my HSA if I change health insurance plans to one that no longer qualifies? If you do that, you'll no longer be able to contribute to your health savings account. But the good news is that any money you already have in there can still be used to pay for qualified medical expenses, even if your new insurance plan does not make you eligible for an HSA. Pretty nifty. Alright, so to this point we've covered what an HSA is, how it functions, and what the limitations are. If you're like me, there's one question that's really burning in your mind. Why would I deposit my money into an HSA if it only restricts how I can spend it? The answer is because there are some significant tax advantages to doing so. If you have an HSA, it can be described as triple tax advantaged. Any money you deposit into an HSA, up to the annual limit, is tax-free, just like contributions to a traditional IRA or to a 401k. The money inside your HSA can grow, and if it does, the growth is tax-free. More on that in a minute. And finally, when you use the money in your HSA to pay for qualified medical expenses, you get to withdraw and spend that money tax-free as well. Your money is tax-free going into the account, tax-free while it's growing inside of the account, and tax-free coming out of the account. That's what makes it triple tax advantaged. You might be wondering about that whole growing inside of the account thing. What does that mean? Well, in this respect, your health savings account isn't like your everyday savings account at your bank or credit union. It's more like an individual retirement account or a brokerage account in that you can use the money in your HSA to invest in things like stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. This is hugely advantageous because you have the opportunity to earn a much larger return on your dollars than if you just kept them in a plain old savings account, where you'd be lucky to be earning even 1% interest. And remember, all those earnings are tax-free as well. Health savings accounts sound pretty attractive, right? So who are they best suited for? To answer that, I think it's important to examine both your medical and your financial situations. Medically, if you're the type of person who is frequently visiting the doctor, or if you have some surgical procedures coming up, you're probably going to want a health insurance plan with a low deductible, so that your insurance will cover more of your medical expenses when all is said and done. In that case, you probably wouldn't qualify for an HSA because your deductible will not meet the minimum threshold. Financially, you need to have a fair amount of flexibility for an HSA to really make sense. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, or if you're working on becoming debt-free, you might not have the luxury of setting aside extra money in a savings account earmarked for healthcare expenses. That's just the reality for a ton of people out there. If you don't have that kind of financial flexibility, or if you do have a lot of medical expenses, the honest truth is that an HSA probably is not the best fit for you. However, if you've got a high deductible health plan because it makes sense for you medically, and you've got some flexibility in your monthly budget, opening an HSA can be an excellent decision. You have the opportunity to save money every month by going with the cheaper, high deductible plan because you don't have a history of needing a ton of medical treatment. You can get a pretty big tax break, potentially to the tune of thousands of dollars, depending on your income level and how much you deposit every year. And you can build up a reserve of tax-free cash that you can access in the event of a medical emergency, or later down the road for some planned medical expenditures, even if you've switched over to a plan with a much lower deductible. I normally do my best not to generalize, but I think the HSA works particularly well for young adults who don't find themselves needing medical care too often and have a salary of more than $55,000 per year. The high deductible health plan makes sense, and once you reach that income level, the tax savings from an HSA start to become pretty significant. If you fit into that group, you can ride out your 20s while building up your HSA, and then when it comes time to start a family, switch to a health insurance plan with a lower deductible and reap the tax benefits of the account. Do you have an HSA? Have you found it to be useful? Let me know about your experiences in the comments. If you enjoyed learning about health savings accounts, click right here to learn about the Roth IRA, which is, in my opinion, the ultimate retirement account, especially for young adults. And if you're not yet a PPF subscriber, click right here to hop on board. As always, thanks for watching. I'm Andrew Shear, and I'll see you next time.